Hey, what's up you guys? My name's Brighton and I'm going to show you how I made the Dragon Slayer from the legendary manga and anime Berserk. If you're in the medieval times, big ass swords, demons, badass main character, Berserk is for you. Now if you are going to read the manga or watch the anime after watching this video, 1, I'm honored, and 2, prepare yourself for the eclipse. This video isn't meant to be a deep dive on Berserk or anything, it's just me showing you guys how I made this cool ass heaping hunk of iron. And without further ado, I'm going to show y'all how I made it.
Here are the files I used for it. If you would like to use them, I'll leave them in the description for you.
Let's get into the filament costs. Now I knew this was going to take a lot of filament from the jump because it's a huge prop, but I lowered the infill percentage so it wasn't too heavy, but I also highered the wall density so it was still really structurally sound. And all in all, it cost around 60 to 80 bucks, and I used a lot of filament that I just had laying around anyways.
And here are all the parts printed out and taped all together. And straight after that, I got right to PLA welding because even though it's super glued on the inside to that PVC pipe, I wanted it to all be one solid piece, and it turned out pretty well. Then we were on to the wood filler. I went pretty heavy on most sections, but especially on the blade because I wanted it to be as smooth as possible and cover up those seams that I had just welded in.
Instead of using a normal piece of sandpaper like I usually do for my helmets, I ended up using an orbital sander, which was a really weird change of pace. The orbital sander thrives on flat, constant areas, so that's why I never really use it on any of my helmets, but it went to town on the sword, and it turned out a lot better than I was expecting.
Now, when going on passes with the orbital sander, I didn't want to go too hard on one area because it was actually able to melt the plastic, but I got it a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be originally, and next up is that good old filler primer. Now, when spraying on that filler primer, I decided to go really heavy on it because I just wanted to cover up all those imperfections really good.
After slapping that first coat of filler primer on, it was game time. It was so awesome to see it all uniform in one color, and it kind of made me realize, like, I'm pretty close to finishing this thing. And the next parts are probably the most fun of the bunch.
Now, when putting on this black coat, I really needed to be generous with how much I put on because it all needed to be black for the next 2 steps, and I actually found a Rust-Oleum can at Walmart that had a horizontal spray setting, which made this so much nicer and so much easier to put on.
After painting it black, there was still something really big that I needed to address, and that was the texture on the black part of the Dragon Slayer. I opted into using a sponge with a little bit of wet paint, and it actually went pretty well.
Now, when doing this, there is absolutely no right way of doing it. I just grabbed a random sponge, painted the Dragon Slayer a little bit, and while it was still wet, I just hit the living shit out of it. And I was so shocked to see the results. As you can see from the video right here, it actually looks pretty decent. I was gonna do some drywall foam instead, but you know, given that I'm in college, I don't have a ton of money, so this was a much better option.
For my favorite part of the project, I ended up using some graphite powder to really make this thing look like a heaping hunk of iron.
I am still so glad that I decided to use graphite powder over some generic ass silver from Walmart, because while generic ass silver can look good depending on what situation you use it in this certain situation, it's so much better to use graphite powder because it sells you on 2 things, and that's believability and realism. This thing looks like a heaping hunk of iron because of that graphite powder, and I am so happy with how it turned out.
Finally, I ended up using some athletic tape for the grip on the handle, and then I bloodied my hands up with some fake blood and put them on. That sounded so fun. Anyways, here is the moment we've all been waiting for. The reveal of the coveted weapon of the Black Swordsman. I'm going to show it to you guys right now. Making this Dragon Slayer was probably my favorite prop that I've ever made, and it did take a lot of time and money, so if you could, leave a like, subscribe, they're both free, and it helps me out a ton, and leave a comment down below on what I should make next, because I'm always open to any other suggestions.